This week on the video version of the Business of Tech, you're not returning to the office this year. CISA to the MSP's customers ask these questions, including financial health, the opportunities in IT spend for this year into next, companies who work with competitors outperform, says a study, Windows 11 management guidance released, Microsoft says moving to work from home is indefinite and impacted productivity and innovation. All this and more. Hit that like and subscribe button, and let's get into this week's stories. On Thursday of last week, CISA released its Risk Considerations for Managed Service Provider Customers paper. This one is too big to get lost over a long holiday weekend, so it's my first story. The paper is specifically focused on customers and three organizational groups within them. First, senior executives and board of directors in what is deemed strategic decision-making, procurement professionals called operational decision-making, and network administrators, systems administrators, and frontline cybersecurity staff for tactical decision-making. Let's focus in one area. What should an MSP provide to an organization in advance of contract award? The list includes detailed guidelines for incident management, including the MSP's incident response responsibilities, warranty information, compensation for service outages, and plan to provide continuous support during a service outage. Remediation acceptance criteria that define the steps the MSP will take to mitigate known risks. A statement from the MSP on how data from different clients will be segmented or separated on the MSP's networks, and documentation of the MSP's financial health, performance record for other clients, and disclosure of any previous legal issues. And that's just the contract basis, as the tactical guidance includes such items as understand the supply chain risks associated with your MSP, such as network security expectations. Create a baseline for system and network behavior to detect future anomalies. Continuously monitor network devices' security information and event management appliance alerts. And appropriate monitoring of the service provider's presence, activities, and connections to the customer network. Now, why do we care? Frankly, if you're delivering IT services, you should be reading and processing this guidance. These are the questions customers will and should be asking you. Take a moment here to consider, are you prepared to show financial health to your customers? It's not an unreasonable requirement for a business, one who believes technology is a critical component of their operations, to ensure that the vendor they work with is financially sound before transferring responsibility of that resource. How about the monitoring of your service within your customer's network? I've mentioned monitor the monitor as a concept before. Customer asks to do this. Are you prepared? I've quipped recently that there are specific tools that I, as a customer, wouldn't want in my network. Then what? Large consulting firms are ready for these questions. The overwhelming majority of providers less than $5 million in revenue. Are they? As we return to work in the US from the long holiday weekend, I'm revisiting the recurring theme of reopening, with the New York Times headline, Why You Might Not Be Returning to the Office Until Next Year. Uber is the latest company to delay reopening into January. The factors at play for leaders to consider, per the article, the uncertainty about variants, vaccine mandates, increasingly vocal employee demands, and potential labor shortages. If you want to dig into this topic, Wired has a similar piece with a UK slant to it as well. That piece also highlights the concern that the longer the work-from-home model sticks around, the less and less likely people will want to return to the office. Security is a concern too. Only 21% of a recent SunGuard survey say they are fully confident their infrastructure security can support long-term remote work. Now, why do we care? The network security angle is a bit obvious and important, so I included it. Do that, and let's focus on the additionally higher value stuff. I believe that the shift to a dispersed workforce is done and isn't going back. The real value is in helping customers be effective. In these two pieces, much of the conversation is with HR, not with IT. This is business process consulting, and that work is far more valuable than simply setting up remote workers. On top of that is skills training for managers, how to manage employees and workloads remotely. At this point, I'm writing off most plans for returning to the office in 2021 entirely. Rather than chase a moving target, I'm focusing more on ways to embrace the different rather than cling to what was in a hope it may go back. All the signs point to that not happening. I want to start by revisiting that IDC sales data from last week, particularly having noted ZDNet's analysis. IDC predicted that shipments of traditional PCs, including desktops, notebooks, and workstations, will reach almost 96 million units in 2021 in the EMEA region, a 13.2% increase compared to the previous year. It's the nature of the demand that's changing. PC shipments destined for consumers increased particularly fast last year as users looked for entertainment during lockdown. This was reflected in the strong growth of consumer desktop sales, which were typically used for gaming. Now, in the second quarter of 2021, IDC expects consumer demand for desktops to decline slightly by less than 2% in Western Europe, as the ending of lockdowns quells interest in gaming. Consumer demand in general is not expected to be as strong as before. For example, as schools reopen, parents will be less likely to purchase the hardware that is necessary for online learning. But the real driver of sales for the remainder of the year is expected to come from the commercial market. In Western Europe, IDC anticipates the commercial market will grow by almost 25% in the next quarter, driven by employers' investments in hardware to support new forms of working. As hybrid working methods become more established, companies will be purchasing notebooks to support digitization projects, but they will also be investing in desktops as employees return to the office. So let's couple this with some Gartner data. There's expected to be an 8.6% increase in spending for 2022, with a focus on cloud computing, data analytics, and IT security. Maybe, says Tech Republic, as their survey data says 43% of respondents will tighten their IT budgets due to COVID 19. Of course, 23% said there'll be no impact to budgets. Their noted biggest priorities: improving network and internet security, cloud services, digital transformation, and employee training. Why do we care? Do love sifting through conflicting data. So the PC surge was consumer driven, and IDC expects the commercial market to grow. Note Windows 11 is in that timeframe too, and clearly a contributing factor. The wild card is the pandemic. Will those wallets open up? Maybe. Cash is always king during a crisis. Getting close to your customer and understanding their customer is the savvy play here. This isn't a slam dunk. And after looking at the larger market, let's dive into staffing. CompTIA's analysis of the U.S. labor statistics data says tech companies are on a hiring spree, adding 26,800 workers in August, which is the largest monthly gain since November 2018. Unemployment in tech occupations is at 1.5% compared with a national rate of 5.2%. Finding those workers might be made worse by software, says a report from the Harvard Business School. Automated resume scanning software is mistakenly rejecting millions of viable candidates. Used by 75% of U.S. employers, examples are rejecting candidates with gaps of 6 months in their employment history or specific mismatches of skills with a single one missing. Companies seem aware of the problems. Nearly 9 out of 10 executives knew they were losing candidates, but fixing the problems would require overhauling their hiring systems. Workers don't have the time to get new skills, with gaps in cybersecurity and cloud computing knowledge, per a Pluralsight survey. While 62% of organizations offer online technology skills development, only half of employees use the resource in the last 12 months. Nearly half, at 47%, of employers invested in virtual instructor-led training, but only 1 in 3 employees used it. Workers also seem to waste a lot of time on monotonous tasks. In a Chiron report, 79% of workers surveyed said they waste 30% of the day or more on those, and 78% of employees are willing to push repeated tasks off to a digital assistant. New data from MBO Partners, which is a company that provides business solutions to the independent workforce, aka gig workers. The number of people employed in non traditional ways in the U.S. jumped 34% this year compared to 2020 at 51 million. That's 1/3 of U.S. employment. This includes contract workers, the self employed, temp and on call, and those getting short term jobs through online apps or marketplaces. And some data on Amazon staffing via Bloomberg. When screening for marijuana, the company's driver applicant pool drops by 30%. When explicitly advertising they do not screen for weed, Amazon says the pool jumps by 400%. So why do we care? So tech workers are hard to find. Hiring algorithms are rejecting candidates, yet businesses won't fix the problem. Employees aren't given enough time to expand their skills and in some cases could automate portions of the job. Workers are becoming gig workers, and overscreening on things like marijuana, now increasingly legal, are also reducing the employment pool. I don't believe there's a labor shortage, and instead, a lot of employers not investing in building a workforce is the problem. The takeaway here is that those who invest deliberately with something else can clearly outperform. Ask the what ifs. What if an employer didn't screen for drugs? What if an employer invested in people rather than in hiring systems? What if an investment in automation freed up workers rather than replaced them? Ask, what if? The first ever Cisco Provider Elevate 2-day virtual event is September 14th and 15th. Start the journey with thought leaders from around the world. With 55 speakers, 22 educational and interactive sessions, networking happy hours, and a self-assessment to help you grow. I'll be a speaker, and best of all, it's free. Registration link is below in the description, because together we elevate. REvil is back. The group behind the CISA ransomware attack has resurfaced. Their website went dark on July 13th, and researchers are now confirming their blog and infrastructure is back online. Accounts by Black Frog indicate the group was responsible for more than 23% of the attacks they tracked in August. CrowdStrike released a report Wednesday which gives direction on how the threat actors are operating, shifting more from state-sponsored attacks to local cybercrime. From CyberScoop. From July 2020 to June of this year, Russian state-backed hacking outfits accounted for only a tiny sliver of nation-sponsored attacks aimed at commercial enterprises, detected by the cyber firm's threat hunting service, at 1% compared to China's 69%. The Russian-based hacking group Wizard Spider, meanwhile, was responsible for double the number of detected attempted intrusions of any other gang during the same period. The company noted state-sponsored attacks have shifted from commercial organizations to geopolitical targets. The FBI is also noting a large increase in sextortion attacks, which are threats to publish sexual images unless victims paid a fee. The Federal Trade Commission, meanwhile, is seeking its first ban on stalkerware, filing a complaint against SpyPhone, which is an app marketed to monitor loved ones' internet activity. The company is accused of selling real-time access to illegally harvested data and failing to enact basic security measures to safeguard the data it collects. A specific vulnerability to focus on, Microsoft has issued a warning about malicious Office files, a 100% reliable zero-day. The company advises disabling ActiveX controls in Internet Explorer to render it inactive and has issued guidance on how to do so. Survey data from HP Wolf Security. 91% of those surveyed said they have felt pressured to compromise security due to the need for business continuity during the COVID-19 pandemic. 76% of respondents said that security has taken a back seat, and furthermore, 83% believe that working from home has created a ticking time bomb for corporate security incidents. And a key quote from Microsoft President Brad Smith from his new book, quote, it's impossible to avoid the grave conclusion that the sharing of cybersecurity threat intelligence today is even more challenged than it was for terrorist threats before 9/11. Now, why do we care? The opponent, or the competition as we should be redefining them, is adapting and changing. They're both ramping up further based on continued success and refining their targets. I wish I had new advice here. It's the framing right now I focus on. Thinking about that HP Wolf data, if this was viewed in a competitive lens rather than a cost management one, would the same choices have been made? Or can they be re-examined now? And is that the opportunity? Would love to hear from you, listener. A new study on the digital strategies of better performing companies and their leaders versus followers. A big one, 80% of leaders are being more willing to collaborate with competitors than followers. Quoting Channel Life, the study found that in an increasingly digital business environment, senior executives now see many areas of their organizations vulnerable to cyber attacks beyond the IT function. Finance is predicted to be the most prone to cyber attacks, followed by customer databases, research, and development. According to the report, leaders are more focused on customers than followers, suggested they are more focused on preventing cyber attacks on customer data. This from the Tata Consulting Services, TCS, global study titled Where, How, and What Leaders Will Compete Within the New Decade. Now, why do we care? This got my attention as a long-standing advocate for both transparency and peer groups. My friend Carl Polachuk wrote in his blog this week that he doesn't think that any small business should worry about their competitors, and this data certainly seems to give some backing to that thinking. I think Carl's right from the sense of any individual competitor. There seems little reason to worry about a specific company. You aren't competing with the specific provider down the street. Any analysis there is likely too specific. Instead, model two competitors. A generic competitor who looks like any of your commodity services, and a version that is the new upstart. If you didn't have any legacy baggage to deal with, your company would look different and maybe more agile. Model against those generic competitors and still share openly with actual competitors. Microsoft has given up predicting when they are reopening. They announced an indefinite delay to their reopening yesterday. The company also released new updates to Teams, including adding CarPlay to mobile and intelligent camera support. That space is hot. Google also updated Workspaces with more remote work support this week, including a feature called Spaces to allow real-time collaboration. A new peer-reviewed study by Microsoft researchers of more than 61,000 Microsoft employees finds that the shift to remote work has hurt communication and collaboration among different business groups there. The researchers call it a warning sign for other companies as well. Quote, without intervention, the effects we discovered have the potential to impact workers' ability to acquire and share new information across groups, and as a result, affect productivity and innovation, they write in an accompanying blog post. In light of these findings, companies should be thoughtful about if and how they choose to adopt long-term work-from-home policies. The Microsoft study says remote work has also changed the way employees communicate, causing them to rely more frequently than before on asynchronous communications, such as email and instant messages, and less frequently than before on synchronous communication, such as audio and video calls. And workers are worried about COVID. The Census Household Pulse study has been asking about people not working due to, quote, being concerned about getting or spreading the coronavirus. After a peak in July 2020, the number had been declining, but after a low between July 21st and August 2nd, the number is going back up, now at 3.2 million for the period between August 18th and 30th. Why do we care? It's the key phrase in there about companies being thoughtful about if and how they adopt long-term policies. Isn't it already long-term now? And with indefinite holds now occurring, well, be thoughtful now if you haven't already been. And that's the challenge in focus. Not a technology challenge, but a management one. Can a business find its way with the reality of a dispersed workforce with new employee concerns and different management styles? That's the interesting opportunity too, and why I track this data. Microsoft has issued guidance on Windows 11 management, policies for Windows 10 via group policy, and tools like Microsoft Endpoint Manager will, quote, just work on Windows 11. The policies even get labeled Windows 10 and later, not Windows 11. Users of Windows Update for Business will be able to use Windows Update for drivers and critical security updates, while also controlling Windows 11 feature updates via Microsoft Endpoint Manager Configuration Manager. Why do we care? I really do get the sense this is a branding exercise more than a massive change. The data covered this week about PC growth certainly implies there's opportunity, and this positioning is clever. I'm not dismissive that there's effort for a provider to invest to be ready for this. This just indicates the scale isn't as large as some previous upgrade cycles. The FCC is looking into deals between landlords and ISPs to find out if those deals raise prices for apartment dwellers. Being examined are revenue sharing agreements in which the landlord takes a percentage of the revenue an internet service provider receives, incentivizing the landlord to steer tenants to that provider, exclusive wiring agreements that involve a landlord saying only one internet provider can use a building's wires to provide service, and exclusive marketing agreements where only one company can market its services in the building. The FCC vendor Lightbox has released a nationwide broadband map using U.S. geographic data and connectivity data. Per the map, 60 million people in the U.S. lack broadband access, which is a number a lot higher than estimates from the FCC or third-party site Broadband Now. It's happening locally, too. The city of Boston is spending the next 6 months on a commission to examine digital inclusion and broadband expansion efforts during the pandemic. The intention is to do assessments and recommend strategies for improving service availability. Why do we care? Broadband access will be changing, and I'm cheering all the way to the bank for the opportunity to access more customers. To unlock all the potentials of the cloud for all customers, this is a necessary change. Telcos, be warned. IT services companies, be excited. Thanks for tuning in to This Week in the Business of Tech. Shows come out each week, pulling together the daily podcast. If you like this show, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. The content here is possible because of supporters like you. If you want access to shows early, answers to your questions, and private interactions, join our Patreon. It's pay what you want. You decide what the content is worth. Join at patreon.com/MSPradio. Patreons also get access to the written versions of every story as they come out. If you want the stories right away, you can get them on the daily podcast. Find The Business of Tech on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or wherever you get your shows. Subscribe links at businessof.tech, and I'll talk to you again next week.